Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh. In most of the world, or at least the Western world, we've just entered into the new year. And New Year's are times of new beginnings and times of new hopes and times of resolutions. Everyone has their New Year resolution. What are we going to do about our life that's different this year than in the past? Have we given this any thought? Each of us is writing a story. We may not be aware of that. We may not even be cognizant of it. We may just think that we're living our life, but in the process of living our life, we are writing the story of our life. Each of us is an actor on the stage of our life. And each of us plays a role. And we determine the nature of the role that we play. Now, the actual availability of roles seems to be without limit. As you look around the world, you see so many different characters in so many different guises and so many different disguises in so many different cultures and so many different ways of being. It seems that there are an enormous number of possibilities of beings to be, of roles to play. But in truth, we have a limited number of roles that we can play and a limited number of options. And within those limited number of options, everything that you see is contained within them. And the options that are available to us are either to be a man, to be Satan, or to become godly. And we fluctuate within that spectrum. And this is the spectrum of consciousness. Our consciousness can be low, animalistic, satanic, or it can rise to where we are man, and it can improve from man into godly behavior. Now, we, in writing this story, which is our life, write this story in the setting of this world, in the setting of form. And as long as this story is written within form, we are limited to the consciousness that we are capable of progressing into. My teacher was once asked to relate his story. And he said, I didn't come here to tell you about me. My story is insignificant. His story is the story that needs to be told and the story that needs to be understood. Now, as long as we write our story within the setting of this world, and the setting of form, we are limiting ourselves to a story about ourselves that's set within the confines of the material world, that's set within the confines of the illusory world. Now, can we make the leap from a story about ourselves within form to a story about ourselves in the formless state? Can we make that leap from form to formlessness? Can we make the leap from attachment to the world to non-attachment to the world and an attachment to that which is formless? Can our love for that which created us become greater than our love for the world? Can our love for the qualities that are elevated be greater in us than our love for the material things that are available to us in this world? And can we make a stand as to our position on these things? Now, some of the things that we should understand is that over the course of our life, we have had various difficulties, each of us. Over the course of our life, we have had various sorrows, troubles, and all of these things have come to us through and because of our attachments to the elemental world, to attachments to illusion, to our needs and desires within illusion. And so as we go through our life and as we play with our desires and our needs in illusion and attempt to somehow culminate our needs in obtaining that which we desire in illusion, we go through the process of the difficulty that illusion brings us. We go through the process of the difficulty that we encounter in trying to work our way through the maze of this world to obtain that which we want or desire. If we are able to understand the nature of our attachments, if we are able to understand the nature of our clinging to the world, we can begin to understand what it is that causes us problems. We can see that we create expectations, we create mental images, and we work to fulfill these expectations and these mental images, and we attach to these expectations and these mental images ideas of happiness, sadness, success, and failure. And we then constantly are fluctuating between success and failure, between happiness and sorrow. It's as if we were on a roller coaster ride, constantly running into these things in the ups and downs of our life. And if you read novels, that's what keeps you reading. The successes and the failures and the trauma that people go through to obtain what it is that they are looking for. When we begin to realize that our successes and our failures have more to do with our own mental images of things than with reality, we begin to understand that as long as we hold strong mental images of things within illusion, we are going to run into difficulties. And it's only when we give up our imaging of the world that we can break through to understanding that which is formless. Imagine compassion. Now, compassion is not going to give you a picture of something. Now, you might think of compassion as watching Mother Teresa work or watching a saint hand out grace towards his students or towards his disciples or towards the people that he runs into. But the images of compassion don't create desire, don't create need, don't create a feeling of success and or failure. In the same way, mercy has to be conceived. Kindness has to be conceived. Love has to be conceived. And what we find is that these aren't images, but these are feelings. And these feelings come from a different part of us than our mind. They come from our heart. And we feel the interconnection between ourselves and the rest of humanity through those concepts, through mercy and compassion, through kindness and love, through Allah's qualities. We feel our connection to others. But as long as we have very strong needs and desires and very powerful mental images of these needs and desires, they are going to separate us from the qualities that bring us closer to others. Because when we are in the state of need and desire, we're not interested in others. We're not interested in seeing the God in others. What we're interested in is obtaining the bounty of illusion. What we are caught in is obtaining the treasures of illusion, creating the wealth of illusion. Sometime in each of our lives, we have to come to the conclusion that this wealth in illusion is limited in its nature and is limited in what it can do for us. If you look at different people in different states, you'll find that different people with different things have a different level of contentment. For instance, there was a story about a man whose name was Basim, who never spoke ill of anyone in his life, and who worked as a janitor and swept floors his whole life and lived a very, very meager life. And because he had never spoken ill of anyone in his life, when his death came, he was welcomed by the angels as a very rare individual from earth, one who had never spoken ill of anyone else. This was something to celebrate. And he was asked, "What is it that you want? Allah has told us, the angels, to supply for you. whatever you need. And he thought, and then he said, could I have a warm roll in butter every morning? And this was sufficient for him. Now, a king who only has one carriage is a distressed king. He needs to have many carriages. He needs to have many servants. He needs to have many people in his employ. He has to have all of his possessions gilded. There's different needs. A beggar might be satisfied with a loincloth. A king may not be satisfied with an entire kingdom. We have to find satisfaction within our life. So as we're working into this New Year's and New Year's resolution, as opposed to asking for things, we should ask for Allah and ask for Allah's qualities and ask to be satisfied with Allah's qualities, which means to truly understand the nature of Allah's qualities. Because in reality, Allah's qualities are a greater treasure than anything that we can find in this world. It is beyond imagination if we can truly connect with that reality, if we can truly connect to understanding that reality. Now, we should all understand that we are moving towards that reality, whether we want to or not. The nature of this existence is that we live within this world and then we don't, that we work within this world and then we don't. We need to be able to express our love for Allah and our attachment to Allah so that when we no longer live in this world, we are welcome into the next world. We are welcome into that place of transcendent qualities. So we need to work towards those transcendent qualities. So as we write our story in this world about ourselves, there has to be a chapter when a change begins to occur. And that change is that we no longer write about our achievements. We no longer write about I. We begin to write about Allah. And Allah becomes the story that we write about in our life. The transcendence into Allah's qualities becomes the story that we write about ourselves. Because if we don't make that change, if we don't make that transition from worldly desire to godly desire, from worldly infatuation to godly infatuation, then we go the other way. The world is Satan's domain. And if we consume ourselves with that domain, we consume ourselves with Satan. And as we keep company with Satan, we become like Satan. We need to bring that point in ourselves where our heart reaches out to our Creator. And within each of us, we each have the ability to see what we love. And what we love comes from our heart. It is for good reason that the saying, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, is a common phrase within the language, because Some will find beauty in gold. Some will find beauty in women or men. Some will find beauty in real estate. Some will find beauty in animals. And some will find beauty in mercy and compassion. Some will find beauty in transcending illusion. Some will find beauty in escaping from the attachment to illusion. A king and some of his ministers were arguing about what is beauty and how does it come about. And there were a bunch of children playing in a courtyard. And the king asked one of his slaves to come over, and he gave him a very handsome cap, jewel encrusted. And he said, put this on one of the children in the group that are playing that you think it is most suitable for. And the slave took it, and first he put it on the head of the king's child. And he said to himself, that doesn't look quite right. And then he kept putting it on other children's heads until he put it on his own son's head. And to him, that felt absolutely perfect. So he took his son by the hand with the little hat and brought him to the king. And he said, of all the children wearing the hat, it was my opinion, and you told me to use my opinion, that the hat was most perfect on my son. And the king said, very good. And he let him keep his hat and told him to leave. Then he discussed with the ministers about the situation. And it was evident to everybody that his son was the ugliest of all the children. And his son was the least suitable to wear this hat. But it was his son. And then they all agreed that love is in the eyes of the beholder. They could not see his son in the way he saw his son. And we all have certain inclinations on how we see things in the world and how things attract us in the world. We have attachments. We may have blood ties. We may spend a lifetime trying to work with our children and make them successful as if that were the most important thing in the world. We may spend a lifetime helping our parents to make sure they were comfortable as if that were the most important thing in the world. Or we may spend a lifetime trying to make ourselves comfortable as if that were the most important thing in the world. We have to set up a priority of what's important in this world. And then we have to write that story about ourselves. It has to become our story. Our story will become whatever we consider the most important things in existence. Our story will become whatever it is we prioritize in our existence. There were two friends, and they would play instruments for each other, and they would take turns playing and listening. And when one would play, the other would describe how gorgeous the music was and how it gave him visions of what he was playing about. He would describe how he saw lakes and mountains and streams, how he saw beautiful, beautiful things when the other played. And they both did that to each other for years. And they had this incredible bond of friendship. And their life consisted of playing for each other. And then one passed. And when he died, the other one cut the strings on his harp. There was no longer a reason to play. Well, he had lost the attachment that went along with playing. Now he had the opportunity to move in another direction. He could do something else. What is it that we are tied to that we have to cut the strings off so that we are no longer caught in it? It's that way for each of us. A man went to a sheikh and said, "You talk about illusion all the time, as if all of this doesn't really exist. So why do I need to do anything? Nothing exists. I'm in the midst of perfection because nothing exists. So I don't need to do anything more." And the sheikh had a stick next to him, and he smacked the guy across the back with the stick. And the guy reacted and started screaming and getting angry. And he said, "If nothing exists, where does all this anger come from?" And we need to realize all of the things that we're attached to. We need to realize how we're attached to them. We need to realize that in the midst of illusion, we need to work out reality and find reality. We need to find the place where reality exists, and each one of us has to find it for ourselves. Now, we're blessed in that we've had a teacher who was a mirror for us to show us that reality. Now, interestingly enough, tens of thousands of people came before this mirror. A couple of hundred stayed. Why? Was what he was showing any different to the ones who left than to the ones who stayed? Was he any different to the ones who left than to the ones who stayed? Or do we all make a choice whether to acknowledge the truth when we see it, or to chase the images that are in our mind as if they were the truth? We cannot find peace as long as we stay within our imagination. We cannot find peace as long as we conjecture about finding peace within this world. A dervish was with a master who only had one disciple, who he was the only disciple of. And everybody was with masters who had hundreds of disciples, but he was very, very happy with his teacher and the fact that he was the only one with him. There came a time when his teacher passed, and the dervish was wandering, and he ran into a man who was a clairvoyant, who could see things that others couldn't see. And the man asked him about his teacher, and he told him about his teacher. And he said, "You know, your teacher wasn't a real teacher. Your teacher was a false teacher." And the dervish looked at him and he said, "Well, I don't know if he was a false teacher or a true teacher, but I know that my faith is real, and that's enough." And that's the point. What is the level of our faith? How strong is our faith? Because it's within faith that we find hope. It's within faith that we find resolution. It's within faith that the answers to our existence come. It's within faith that we straighten out all the difficulties that we have. It's within faith that allows us to ignore all the slings and arrows of the world. And as you become closer to the truth, more slings and arrows are going to come, because that's the nature of the world. When you enter reality, illusion despises you. And everyone who is within illusion despises you. They don't work together. The only ones that you will be able to make connections with are others who have found or are looking very strongly for reality. The only ones that you'll be able to make connections with are the true lovers in this world. Everybody else will mock you and deride you. The lovers are rejected in every religion. The lovers, Saint Francis of Assisi was rejected by Catholicism. Halaj was rejected by formal Islam. The Baal Shem Tov, the father of the mystic Hasidism and Judaism, was rejected by the Jewish Orthodoxy. Jesus was rejected by the Orthodoxy. All of the lovers are rejected by the Orthodoxy because everybody who hasn't found love is usually practicing power. And power and love don't coincide. So when you run into the ones who need power or who want power or who live on power, there's going to be conflict because they cannot bear your love. They cannot bear your truth. And Allah can only be found in truth. Once we digress from truth, we digress from the true path. We enter into the path of illusion. So we have to hold on very strongly to truth. And as we hold on to truth, we have to bring the kalima into our being, la ilaha illallah, which is the pivot of truth, which is the pivot of reality, which is the core of the stepping stone towards transcendence. And we have to make that decision. And we have to make the decision that we will come to know our Lord, that we will come to know ourself and know our Lord through knowing the truth about ourselves. So we have to stop writing this story about what we've accomplished in the world and start writing this story about how we are merging with God. It's a different tale with a different purpose and a different inclination and a different result. One leads to transcendence and the other leads to degradation. And this is the choice that we are constantly given. And this is the choice that we have to make as to our life. Do we do things for the betterment of our situation in this world, or do we do things for the betterment of our soul, which goes beyond this world? We all need to get to know our souls. We all need to take time to concentrate on our souls. We all need to understand our connection to Allah, our connection to our Creator, the mystery that exists between the Creator and the creation. In the beginning, when the Nur separated from the still silence that was Allah, there was communion between them. They spoke to each other and they knew each other. This knowing was the essence of the creation of the archetype of man. And man was made to continue that resonance that went on between the Nur and Allah. So we need to bring ourselves into that resonance with our Creator. And we have to find a way that we can do this. And at the core is La ilaha illallah. But we should also spend time meditating on the nature of truth and the nature of our Lord. We need to understand His kindness, His love, and that we are created from that love. And we need to find that love that He created us with. And then our life will begin to change. And we'll be writing a new story, a story of transcendence, a story of glory, a story of light, a story of grace and a story of blessing, a story of protection within this world and rising into the next world. And may this new year be the beginning of that story for each of our lives. May it be the beginning of writing the story of our relationship with our Lord and our intermingling with our Lord. May that be the path that we are all taken on. May that straight path be our path. Ameen, ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.